What's going on, Creator Factor fam? This is the podcast where we help creators build communities, brands, and businesses online. I am the host that loves you the most, Ozeal. And today I'm excited to talk about the art of hosting meetups and building relationships. This is my jam, and I have the right man who has mastered turning cocktail parties into big opportunities. And he's an entrepreneur. I call him an adventure seeker. And he's also the best-selling author of the 2-Hour Cocktail Party. He's been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and his TED Talk has been watched over 75,000 times and counting. He's here to share his insights on building big relationships through the magic of in-person meetups. Creator Factor fam, let's welcome to the party, Nick Gray in the building. What's up, Nick?
What's up? I'm excited to talk about events and meetups and all that stuff.
Love your book. As I mentioned, listened to it when it came out, audiobook, of course, and I found it to be super practical, which I know there's a lot of books that I'm an avid book reader, and there's a lot of stuff out there. And I'm like, oh, can you just get to the good stuff? Love the stories and all, but can you give me some practical like tips and advice? And I found your book to be a breath air. It was super practical, and it gave me a lot of tips and guidance on how I managed my meetups here in Houston. So first off, man, from a community builder, event organizer to another, thank you so much for writing this much needed book.
That's such a nice thing to say to an author, that it was very practical and tactical. I think that is like one of the best compliments. I also love to hear when people are like, oh, I read your book in a weekend, or I read your book in one sitting, because that means that it was a good book, or it was an easy book, or it was a book that you could like get through. That feeling, by the way, of like reading or finishing a book in a couple days is such a special feeling. I love that feeling. It makes you feel like so accomplished. Like, yes, I did it. I got the info.
Mm-hmm. The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. Again, I will be linking this up in the show notes for all of you. So I want to dive in because you used to live in one of my favorite cities in the whole entire world, New York City, the Big Apple, and then you relocated to Austin, Texas. I want to say a few years ago. Let's start there. How has that transition been from living in New York City, where there's a lot of things happening, and of course you were the founder of Museum Hack, and you were doing big things over there, and now you're living in chill, eccentric Austin, Texas.
It is.
How's life been in Austin, man?
You know, life has been great here, and I love Texas. I love living in New York. There's no place like New York City. I think everybody in their 20s should live in New York for at least a year. The hardest part about moving to a new city or a new town, and I hear from a lot of my readers, is they're like, how do I meet people? How do I make friends? How do I like build a network and start over? And moving here actually gave me the opportunity to test running my formula like I tell people to do. And I just knew what to do. I got here, I started to host events. I went a little bit crazy. So I was hosting at least once a month, just a simple happy hour, which we'll talk about that little simple 2-hour weekday meetup. But that allowed me to really go through Austin, collecting all these interesting people. And it's why I still love the city, because I love all the people that I've met here. It's amazing.
Let's take it back. Let's take it back to young Nick growing up. Because you grew up in the South, right?
Initially. I grew up in the South, Dallas, North Georgia.
Dallas. Okay, so you're in Texas. Okay. So what was Nick like growing up? Like, what was like your social like vibe growing up, like in high school and onward?
I still am. I was the biggest nerd ever. I spent a lot of time on the computer. A bit of I don't know how to describe it. Like, it's the first thing, I've never said this before, but I almost wonder if it's like a lonely extrovert, where it's not like I was shy, but do you know what I mean? Where like sometimes I
can relate.
Lone wolf. Yeah. I've heard this term, which is ambivert. And ambivert, they mean you're a little bit of an extrovert and a little bit of an introvert. And I feel that sometimes. I feel like even during my own events, when I host, I'll sneak away into my bedroom and like lay down on the bed and like scroll social media and just like I'm just like, I need a break. Or I just need to like recharge like the day afterwards. But I love hosting events. I think growing up, I spent a lot of time on the computer. Our family moved a lot because my dad was always looking for new opportunity for the family and where new jobs could take us. So I was born in Phoenix, lived in California, North Georgia, Dallas, back to North Georgia. I went to school in North Carolina.
So you
Moved
moved
around
around
a
a
little
lot.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Did you grow up always? Were you always in Houston?
So originally from Chicago, but I've been living in Houston for the bulk of my life. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
How many years you been in Houston now?
Oh man, it's been over 18 years now.
I saw such a cool video online, and maybe you saw this one that's just talking about how diverse Houston is.
One of the most
And
diverse cities,
one of
apparently.
the most diverse cities, right? And I think a lot of people think like, oh, New York or
Yeah.
Chicago or LA. But Houston, people just say it's like so actually diverse, not like
Yeah.
performative diverse, but like actually diverse. And also the food scene in
Oh,
Houston, people are sleeping on it.
Texas, period. I mean, Austin has a great, food scene, but yeah, Houston is definitely a great food city for sure.
For
For
real.
sure.
For
And one
real.
of the things you see here, Nick, what I love, and you saw this when you were in Houston, where we met in person at one of your meetups. I remember, just seeing like whenever I started doing the meetups, how diverse, like you really saw diversity in our meetups. You saw a mix of people from all walks,
Yeah.
all races, from all religions come to these meetups. And I've been to other meetups all over, even in New York, and they're not as diverse as Houston. So that's one of the things about Pod Houston and Vid Houston, which is the meetup group that I run here, is that we are definitely like the most diverse creator community that I've been a part of. So I take great pride in that because I love seeing diversity come into the space. So
Heck yeah.
Houston representing here. Houston representing. Let's
We talk about that, by the way, in
yeah.
meetups, if we're just getting tactical or
Yeah.
practical, that many times when people think about hosting a meetup, they're like, okay, well, I got to host it for just creators,
Mm,
or I got to host a meetup just for this, that, or the other, or some specific thing. That's actually one of the biggest mistakes that people make as a new host
okay.
is they try to go too narrow too fast. The number one success indicator I've found for a new host is, will they do an event that they want to host again? Because
Mm,
anyone can teach you how to throw like a blowout party, but the reality is you're going to be so stressed and frazzled and it may not go well. And so much of my work in the 2-hour cocktail party helps give people an easy win for their first event that helps them get a win under their belt and hopefully get the momentum to keep hosting. Because the true winners are people who learn how to make hosting a habit. It allows them to go through life collecting all these interesting people and really building their network. So that's one piece of advice I'd have is like, don't like, as we
mm,
talk about this idea of diversity, that
yeah.
applies to your guests. And that means occupational diversity as well. That means like different age ranges in your group, like both inviting the barista or like the college kid who just has an interesting vibe and a positive attitude, and maybe the retired couple in your neighborhood that you see when you're walking your dog, but you've never had an in-depth conversation with them. Do your first party as an easy, low stakes affair, and you can curate and zone in later on that specific niche. Does that make sense? Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
So you got me thinking a lot about that, especially when I read the book, because my meetups here in Houston, they're very tailored towards a certain avatar, individual creators, whether it's podcasters or YouTubers. But you got me thinking a lot about just creating a cocktail party where I bring in diversity from even backgrounds. They're not necessarily creators, but what would you say with like for somebody who's looking at it? Well, yeah, I'm trying to start a meetup for a specific kind of niche or a community, and I'm trying to build that. Do you still, like in my case, for somebody who has a very specialized niche, do
Mm-hmm.
you still recommend for someone like me to every now and then do a cocktail party where I invite other people? And how do I go about vetting and getting other types of people into my normal base, creator community?
Oh, I like this. I'm cracking my knuckles. I'm getting ready to make this a working session.
Let's go.
So when was the last time that you hosted?
This was December.
This past
2020.
December.
Correct.
Oh, sick. And what was it? How many people came? Like, what was the vibe?
We had about 25 people that showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they were all podcasters.
Really? And is that at the party? Did you do name tags?
I did.
Nice job.
I read your
Excellent.
book, Nick. I mean,
Dude,
this is something I got the same exact name tags that you recommended in your book. I used your link and I went through. I supported you, man. The name tags are
one thing with
amazing.
those name tags, by the way, and this is something new that I've been doing that's not in the book, but I am recommending it to people. Those
Okay.
name tags come, I think it's about 6 different colors that are on that sheet of the name tags. And I am increasingly breaking people up into small groups at the beginning of the party before the big icebreaker, saying, hey, everybody, welcome. We're going to split into small groups real quick just to give you a chance to meet like 2 or 3 new people. When you get into your groups, you're going to say your name and just explain a little bit about like what you do and, what you do for work and like what you do for fun. And take a few minutes to do a round of intros. Now look down at your name tags, and everybody has a color on your name tag. Find everybody else with your same color name tag, and that is your little small group. You guys have 5 minutes to do that now. Go. I have them do that before the big round of intros, which you have to do, especially at like your podcast meetup. I'm sure you're doing it. But then people are like, what? Oh, you're the host. I listen to that podcast. They're like, oh, I'm into financial planning too, or something or other. But those large round of icebreakers. I'll tell you what, I think you should do just a social meetup to just build and put the word out about what you're doing. Because if you were to host a social meetup, let's say once a quarter, and you put the word out and be like, hey, by the way, I also host meetup for podcasters, then everybody knows a podcaster probably, or some people know a podcaster, and that's going to be funnel for you to the other meetup. And it'll just help you build your network of acquaintances and connections so that you're top of mind of people for your biz dev stuff.
Love it. So for someone who is watching or listening who wants to start a meetup cocktail party, 2-hour cocktail party, how do we go about, you mentioned, okay, so I want to do a quarterly meetup. Going back to the question, how do I vet, like, how do I go about, because the creator community is pretty much all I've known for the past 10 years. I mean, I feel like I've been kind of in this because I've been serving the creator community through a lot of things that I do from a business owner and as a podcaster. But if I want to do something where I branch it off to other creators, how do I go about vetting, and like what type of people, like what's that criteria to bring other people into the mix? Is there something like on meetup.com, or I'm just curious, who should I invite?
So for your first party, which this doesn't apply to you, but I want to say it for your listeners.
Yeah.
The first party is meant to be a low stakes affair. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you're not inviting people who you really want to impress. You're not inviting people who you're going to be nervous around. You're not making reaches. You're inviting people you're comfortable with. So that means your family, your neighbors, your existing friends. You want to start with this idea of your core group. And your core group is you're going to make a list of 5 people that you talk to and that you know. An easy way to bring that top of mind, if you can't think offhand, is to open up your text messages or log into Instagram and open up your DMs and look to see who you're DMing, who you're texting, and scroll through and be like, okay, that person lives near me. Yes, I could invite them. And you're going to try to get 5 of those people to say yes to a preliminary invite, which we talk about in the book and we can talk later. But from there, then you branch out to people that you know a little bit more, but that you feel comfortable and that you'd want to see again. For you, Ozeal, I think that I'm guessing on your LinkedIn in Houston, you probably have a corn ton of people that you may have connected with over the past 10 years that you just have fallen out of touch with. You don't even really remember, or on socials or other people in Houston, that there are people out there that are not in the podcasting world. However, you can also invite people for you, have half of them be people from like the creator world. You could also encourage them, say, hey, I'm trying to do like a 2nd degree meetup where I just want to meet new people. Yeah. Would you come and would you bring somebody new who I don't know? And let's get a bunch of interesting people in Sugarland or in Houston together.
Like that.
And it's a social. Say like, there's nothing for sale. There's no sort of agenda. We're not going to do a podcast. I'm not going to pitch my business. The goal literally is there's so many cool people in this town. Yeah. And let's just meet up for a happy hour to say hello.
You got me thinking, Nick. Now I feel like I need to go ahead and reread the book because I know there was a lot of great information like that in the book.
Yeah.
You got my wheels turning because, like you, Nick, one of the things that really energizes me when I was looking at from a business perspective, the top three things that really light me up. I love doing this. I love the conversation. I love the podcast. I do love coaching, but nothing jazzes me up than meetups. Like it really, people really energize me. And I've always been passionate about building community. And that's why when I came across your book, I was like, oh my, there's another person who believes in the art of meetups. Because in this day and age, I want to get your take on this, Nick, where I feel like people are obsessed with this digital age where it's everything's virtual, especially with COVID. Everything was virtual, right? But now I've coming out of COVID, and even now, there's this yearning for people wanting to connect. I'm curious to get your take on, like, where do you see the future of in-person events and meetups going as we move forward and it gets more digital? Do you feel like we're going to get more events, more conferences, people yearning for this deeper connection with one another?
I think so. I think the more digital nature of our time is going to push us towards more live events. I hate
Yes.
live. I hate like virtual events. I don't like. People have been asking me, how does your book apply to Zoom? And I'm like, it doesn't. It
Mm.
please doesn't. Um, I think people are craving the in-person experience. Just look at the
Mm.
success of live podcast recording. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
people going on tours with live podcasts, doing meetups for their live podcasts. Like people are hungry for that human connection. And I think it's just going to continue. Like we're seeing it with events and conferences. They're just coming raging back. So I think there's something special there.
Let's go back a bit because you were talking about your framework, which is in the book. Share with us. Let's get tactical. Share with us the key steps to organizing a meetup. For somebody who's watching or listening who says, "Okay, this sounds amazing. I want to start my own cocktail party." Um, Break it down. Give us the framework on how to have a successful 2-hour cocktail party.
So the easy framework to think about is to remember my name. And my name is Nick, and it's spelled Nick. And it's the easy Nick formula. N stands for name tags.
Yes.
I stands for introductions or icebreakers. C stands for cocktails or mocktails only, no dinner. So don't make it a dinner party. And then the K stands for kick them out at the end. It's only 2 hours long. And that's important, by the way. You need to set a start time and an end time to your party. It's one of the mistakes a lot of people make is they never set an end time. And what that does is it really extends the awkward zone of that first hour when not a lot of people show up or they're planning for traffic to be late, especially in Houston, LA, like other high traffic cities. So that's the formula. Name tags, intros, drink, C for cocktails, cocktails only, and K, kick them out at the end.
That was something that I learned from you. The name tags I was doing, but the icebreakers. So I did incorporate. What's your favorite thing to eat for breakfast? Like I got to see y'all. I got to see Nick. I wanted to see the master work. Just at first I was like, I need to see him work, and he happened to, just for those who are watching, listening, Nick did an event here in Houston. A friend of mine told me about it, and I was like, I got to see this man. Actually, I had picked up your book. I think it was a month prior to
No
that happening,
way,
Nick.
dude.
Yes, talk about divine timing. Like it
That's
was just
amazing.
yes. So when I found out that you were going to be in Houston, I was like, done, done. Let's go. So I was so excited to meet you in person, and of course, as a student of yours, watch you and how you orchestrate this. And one of the things that I saw right out the gate was you just being so energetic and welcoming and hi, how are you doing? And I
Mhm.
mean, you were doing that even before the event. And then when we got there, just you made us feel like all welcome and got the name tags and you were asking us questions and you were very like engaged with each and every one of us.
Mm.
And it just flowed well. And then icebreakers came in and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, that's how it's done. Because I was like, I love that even in the creator meetups, I was incorporating the icebreakers
Yes.
because it broke up. Like, it's not like, what's your favorite podcast? Like, it was just so obvious. I'm like, these icebreakers allowed to showcase different aspects of us that is not necessarily tied into the podcast space. So that was a big game changer for me. And I took that lesson from you, man. So thank you for that. Icebreakers, super important, guys. Super important.
It's cool to do those rounds of intros, those rounds of icebreakers,
Love.
because many times we go to an event and there's what, 15, 10, 15, 20,
Yeah.
25 people that are in the room. And you'll never know who's in the room unless you go up and introduce yourself. Well, a lot of people say, well, just go up and introduce yourself. The reality of 20 people is you're not going to be able to go up and say, hey, what do you do, to
Yeah.
20 different people during an event. And so we do that round of icebreakers, that round of introductions, to let people know, because maybe if you, for example, have two people that do health and fitness related content, they want to know each other. They should meet each other as soon as possible. Or maybe somebody else is trying to hire for this role and somebody knows somebody else and they shout that out during the intro. It really just makes these meetups and these 2-hour parties more efficient, which sounds so silly to say, like efficient party, but you will be known as a great host when you add structure to your events. You will be seen as an amazing host when people get massive benefit from your meetups. The easy way to do that is to follow a formula like this to add structure to your events.
Share with us, Nick, a memorable experience where like an in-person meetup led to like an opportunity or a collaboration. Because many creators are thinking here, oh, it's great for networking and building relationships. But has anything else led into something bigger?
The easiest one that I have done myself and that I've seen some others do is to first know the following. Hosting good events is a skill that you can learn how to do. Hosting good events is a muscle that can be developed. And not everybody has it. You've probably been to a lot of meetups. If you're listening to this, you're like, oh, I've been to a meetup. It was fine, but it wasn't like amazing. You can learn how to host amazing meetups. And a specific example that I can say that happens for me is that I get to host really cool meetups and invite some pretty interesting people who I then hit up afterwards and say, hey, why don't we co-host an event together? Like, I'll invite half people, you invite half people, and then I get to meet all these new people. And so there's some major famous YouTubers whose names I won't mention, but some of them are just like hugely, hugely popular. One guy from Houston has like 10 million followers. And those types of connections I have made. And I've heard from other similar things, not at that level, but folks like, oh my God, this person came and then they wanted me to help them host their next event.
Wow.
So that's a surprising thing that you might not be thinking about that comes when you start to be seen and known as a good host.
When was the last time you went to a meetup?
Oh,
Using
I've
that
been
hosting?
on this tear. I'm so glad you asked, because I've been on this tear where I've been just going to stuff even though I didn't want to, because it's so easy for me to be like, oh, I don't know anybody, or I'm tired. Like, even as a host myself who hosts a ton, even I still feel that way. But I think last week I went to 3 different events. And before each one, I promise you, I was coming up with every reason in the world to cancel. Every reason. And then afterwards, I actually said, I was like, damn, I'm so happy that I went. Saturday, I went to one. It was a creator hackathon.
Oh,
And this guy hosted it. And the idea was, he said, look, we're going to split you up into teams, 4 people on each team. You're going to have some rules and constraints, and you have about 2 hours to create a piece of short form content. And I was like, oh, this sounds so cringe. I don't know. Who are these people? What are we going to do? This seems so silly. And I got the rules and I was like, oh, what? This is about sports. I don't know anything about sports. And then I did it. And like, I'm so happy that I went. It took me out of my comfort zone. I met some really cool people. I saw them using tools that I had never seen before. I saw them like doing editing. I was like, damn, that's pretty cool, actually. So that's just one example, but yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. I need to take that idea. I love that idea. I think that one of the things that I've learned through the meetups, obviously the icebreakers has been a game changer, but creating like breakouts, and you do a great job of breaking out into small groups, and it's all listed in the book. But just making it where it activates people to participate, where it's just
Yes.
not, there's a networking aspect, but I love taking the approach of really activating participation, because that way people are felt like they're embedded in the culture, in the community, and I feel like it just does something to them where it excites them even more, and of course they want to go back when you host another event. So I love that, and you did that very, very well. So that creator hackathon, I love that concept of breaking small groups, creating short form content,
Right?
everybody's participating. I love that. I'm gonna note that down.
This is perfect for your group. I'll tell for listeners, if you
Yeah.
are thinking of some event that you want to host that is perhaps a little bit different than a happy hour, which, by the way, start with a happy hour. Trust me. Start with a happy hour.
Okay.
Just keep it as simple as possible. Okay. But later, if you want a new format, I'll tell you the one that is crack cocaine for people, and that is a book swap. People go crazy for a book swap. And why is that? Because we all have books. We all like books. We have extra books that we want to get rid of, and we always want to get new books. So, this is a way that you can host an easy event. And I've written about it online on a step by step guide. But I feel bad that I even mentioned it because, like, don't do it yet. Don't do it for your first one. But it is so, like, people freaking love a book swap.
I love that idea. Going back to what you were saying about the happy hour, the first event. So you're
Yeah.
thinking about just, what does that look like? Going to a bar on an off night, maybe the best time with Monday through Wednesday, and we can talk a little bit about that. The best times to host a meetup, but going
Mm.
to a bar, setting something up with the owner, and just hosting it there, or because I'm thinking people may be afraid of, like, it's maybe too loud, or is it just a strictly networking event, or can you do all the icebreakers and all that at a bar setting? Like, curious to know a little bit about that. What does that
So
look
I
like?
have kind of a controversial, strong thought about this.
Okay.
And that is that your first meetups actually really need to be hosted at your home.
Nick,
I know.
no,
I know. People
don't
don't like
scare
it.
me. Don't scare
Um,
my home.
I know your home. It's like it's super scary. But I'll tell you why that this is important. Um, your home is a real vulnerable place to bring people into. And your home is a space that you can control the environment. It's a place that you can be generous. Think about a bar. A bar is actually not very generous. It feels like a networking event. People have to
Right.
pay for their own tabs. It feels like a corporate, like a networking event, frankly. And when you host at home, you almost go on like a mini date with somebody. Like, to bring somebody into your home is such a generous, vulnerable act. And it also means that, yes, at the beginning, you have to be more comfortable with people. You have to know people a little bit more. And so we're talking about neighbors, people you've interacted with before, old colleagues. We're not talking about a random meetup request that you're going to post online that says, hey, Houston content creators, come one, come all, strangers welcome. No, you're vetting this list. You're inviting people that you've met before, that you feel safe with, that you say, hey, that person's interesting. I'd love to talk to them a little bit more. And so, yeah, your first one should be at home. I can talk more about that if you're curious. As a backup, if you absolutely cannot host at home for some reason, and trust me, though, 95% of people should host at home. But if you cannot, then I'm increasingly telling people more and more now, another good place to do it is a hotel lobby bar.
Mm.
Hotel lobby bar, ideally, a place like Houston, you want to find a place with like self parking or like easy sort of parking. Hotel lobby bars work really well because they're meant for transients. They're not going to be shocked if you show up with 20 people. They oftentimes have a lot more space than normal bars because they kind of bleed into the lobby. They're quieter and they're
Yes.
just like a much better spot for a meetup. And then the day that you should host is probably on a Tuesday or Wednesday night.
Why Tuesday or Wednesday night?
Tuesday or Wednesday nights are what I call not socially competitive days of the week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday are socially competitive. Like, people are doing a lot of stuff those days, and you're more likely to get bumped. you're more likely to get no shows and cancellations, or people don't say yes because they have other stuff going on. Also, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's easier to host a 2-hour event.
Yeah.
Frankly, if you host on a Friday night and it's 2 hours, people be like, what? This is like my night to go out. Like, I'm not leaving. Like, this is like, I'm out, you know?
Right.
And they're more likely to drink more and party more. And that's really not the vibe for this. This is about the connections and the conversations that happen.
Okay. So we have a venue. We either our home or a hotel lobby, right? And we got our name tags. And now we're gonna go and look at our phone and see who can we text and some interesting people on our LinkedIn and our social and start inviting them. And like, are there any other resources? Do we need to do? I mean, what are your thoughts on Eventbrite or Meetup? Obviously, that's a little bit more public, but when do the tools come in? And as far as because I'm so used to doing those public meetups, but for this one, I feel like it's a bit different. Any other tools that we need to kind of prep for this cocktail party?
You must collect RSVPs for your event. You have to collect RSVPs. And the reason we do this is it's almost like a double opt in, right? You're going to text people, hey, I'm thinking about hosting a little happy hour in 2 weeks. If I do it, would you come? That's the message you send to your core group.
Okay.
For a wider group of people, you're going to say, hey, I'm thinking, for your wider group, you're going to say, hey, in 2 weeks, I'm hosting a little happy hour with some of the most interesting people I've met here in Sugarland. Can I send you the info? And then if they say yes, then you're going to send them a link to the RSVP page. Here are the two platforms that I like for collecting RSVPs. Well, I'll tell you three, and one of them's like super advanced, but you and your listeners might be game. Number one, the one that I use a lot is called Mixily, Mixily. It's free. It's like Facebook events, but without the Facebook. There's no ads. There's no spam.
Mm-hmm.
It looks pretty good on mobile. It's fine. Number two, what all the Gen Z uses, and I've been using more, but it's a little too hip for its own good. It's called Partiful, Partiful. And I'll include links in the show notes to both of the pro tips pages I've created on how to use these tools. Partiful's free as well. It's a lot more on text message than on email, like Mixily, but Partiful's very easy to use. The third one, which is advanced for people that are like really nerdy, is called Luma. And that's lu.ma on the internet. And Luma's very good. It's very advanced. And so it plugs into, you know, Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever. And I find a lot of people that have big marketing backgrounds like to use Luma. Those are three tools for kind of collecting these RSVPs.
Love it. And I appreciate you sharing that link with us. We'll make sure we link it up as well. So let me ask you about your vision for 2024. Like when it comes to the meetups, and the reason I'm asking this is that, you know, obviously you're collecting emails and you have a good network of relationships, and I'm sure in different markets and people doing different things. But where do you see yourself in the meetup culture moving forward? Is it quarterly? I mean, how active are you doing? And what's your motive behind these meetups outside of just meeting people?
The first question is what's my vision for my own meetups?
Correct.
I've now hosted over the last 15 years, on average, I've hosted one meetup a week. So I'm like doing a lot of this stuff. I'm now going deeper for deeper connections. And I'm interested for myself. I'm not saying your listeners should do this, but like this is what I'm exploring next, whether it's for my new book or for something, of doing half-day events, of doing like second-degree dinners, of doing deeper, more intimate things. And so I'm experimenting with that. I hosted a 2-day conference back in December. That was incredible, but it took a lot out of me. But I want to experiment with that stuff. And then was the second question like sort of like, what's my goal?
Yes.
My goal really still is to focus and help people learn to make hosting a habit, to learn how to host their own events. I think we need more house parties. We need more, especially, oh my God, I'm not even going to get into it, but like the political stuff that's going to happen this year with the election, people are going to be saying we're more divided than ever. I mean, we just need to gather. Let's just like get our neighbors together, get people in town together. Let's like meet in person and be reminded of all the connections that we do have instead of getting into the hate and all this stuff online. So I'm trying to get people to host more meetups, and I'm still really focused on that message. I spend a lot of time every day, every week, talking to my readers, helping them, doing free coaching calls just to help people think through. Dude, there's this guy in LA who's like, I'm overthinking this. I want to have 40, 50 people. I got this, that. And I was like, bro, pick a date 2 weeks from now, 24 people max. You're doing this now. Do it small. Quit trying to think too big.
Love it.
Some other people, I can't even get 10 people. And so I say, open up your phone, look through your text messages.
Yep.
You have at least 5 people there. Can they at least bring one person? Like, can they at least bring one person, significant other, friend, something? Okay, well, now you got 10 people. Do you think you can get 6 more people in 3 weeks? And so there's all these different things and hangups that people have about hosting. But I tell you what, it has changed my life to become a host. And I really want to help other people feel and get the benefits that I got.
I love that you're advocating for that, because I do feel like we're especially with COVID and everything that's occurring, with everything going digital and virtual, that just, I know that's my why. Because I know growing up, I was also very introverted, and hosting events gave me permission to bring like-minded individuals together, but it also gave me permission to be myself. And it actually helped me build my own confidence. It helped me build in many ways to articulate my message, to become a better communicator.
Yes.
And it just, there's so many underlying lessons and things that by hosting an event can really teach you about yourself. And plus, I just think it's one of the most generous things we could do to contribute to society, humanity. So
Heck yeah. It's generous. It's that generous word.
Yeah.
And as we think about being creators or doing things to build our network, if you lead with generosity, you'll be shocked at how it comes back to you.
Yeah. What are you excited about most in 2024, brother? Because I was living vicariously through you, Nick. I follow you on Instagram, by the way, at Nick Gray News on Instagram. Again, it'll be linked up. I was like, Nick is all over the place. He's in Mexico. He's in Japan. He's all over. And you were just creating these really fun, short form content, always highlighting local businesses, always showing love. And I'm like, man, that's my man, Nick, like really doing it for the people, doing it for the culture. And first off, I enjoy your content, but like, talk to me about like, what do you, whenever you're putting this video content together, like what's like, what are you thinking, man? Like, how is your focus? I called you an adventure seeker, and I feel like you do seek adventure. You love being around other cultures, and I love your content, man. And again, I live vicariously through you. So, yeah, like, what does 2024 look like for Nick, aside from the events?
Dude, I wish I could tell you that I had some perfect plan that I'm figuring out, but I'm very lucky that since I had my last companies and sold them, I did well. And these days I get to just work on stuff that I truly want to work on. I get to just do the things like a podcast like this midday. It's like, dude, I want to be on Creator Factor. Like, I want to do this. And so I like make time for it. And so similarly, I kind of just follow where my interests lead me. You know, my last trip to Mexico City was so funny. It was like Saturday. I was hanging out with a friend and I was like, hey, should we go to Mexico City tomorrow? Like, how crazy would that be? Like, should we do it? And we said, okay, let's sleep on it for a night. And then like, we'll decide tomorrow. And then 48 hours, we're in Mexico City.
Just like that.
Just like that. And we did it like super spontaneous. When I'm doing my content, I'm learning more about stories. You know, I'm so thankful that you watch my stuff. I also like look at other creators and I'm like, man, I got a long way to go. This week, I've been experimenting with daily vlogs and trying to get better at that. You know, it's impossible. It's not impossible, but it's hard to build an audience on YouTube. And I'm not saying I'm going to throw my hat in that ring, but I'm experimenting to learn more, to be a better storyteller.
Yeah.
And focusing a little bit on my long form content, I think in the end will turn my short form content better. So I'm playing with that right now. I've been doing some daily vlogs. I think I've done 2, 3, 4 of them. just experimenting, learning to tell those better stories. Because you probably see this on a podcast, right? Some like 3,000 people might see your short form clips. But dude, if you get 200 people to listen to the pod and they listen
Yeah.
for 10, 20, 30 minutes, they are dropped in.
It's huge.
They are in your world. And so I'd almost dude, I would rather have 200 podcast listeners than 2,000 short form viewers.
1000%. Nick, so this podcast, just full transparency, on YouTube, it's been a grind to grow this podcast. I don't have much views on this podcast. However, my download numbers 10 to 1 from audio to video. Like I have like over close 1,000, episodes or downloads per episode. Yeah. Awesome. And I'm like, wow. So it's like a faceless community. They're not really engaging. They're passively listening. It's passive consumption, but they're listening and they're from all over the world. And I'm like, well, what about YouTube? But again, as creators, we can all relate to this. I mean, it's a grind. And the fact that you're throwing your hat in there, and my challenge is not to allow the imposter syndrome to get to me, and to know that, hey, I'm just simply documenting, I'm sharing, and I love creating content, and eventually YouTube will catch on, but we're not alone.
Yes.
So, well, cool, man. I do have one curious question I want to ask you. You said that now it's very lifestyle driven. Whenever you obviously you sold 2 businesses, Museum Hack, and did you always have the intent of creating a lifestyle centered around like what you wanted to live your life like, or was it to be an entrepreneur? So I'm just curious to know like where the entrepreneur and like lifestyle Nick comes in.
Hardcore sort of entrepreneur. All my 20s, 30s.
Yeah.
Just like
you come from an entrepreneur background. So.
I come from an entrepreneur background, but it was like all that's all that it was about. And this content creation thing has only been really since I sold my last company.
Okay.
So yeah.
As we land the plane, I always ask our guest if there's just one, Mr. Nick Gray, creator factor that every creator should learn and master. What would that be?
The best book that I ever read about writing a nonfiction book was called Write Useful Books. And my biggest takeaway from that book was to get your work in people's hands much sooner than publishing. So like get it out there. Do not create in a vacuum. And I think with a lot of creators, they're like, oh man, I'm going to launch a podcast. One day I'm going to do it. Or like, I'm going to make a YouTube channel one day. I'm like, bro, just start. Like, just get started. Like stop talking. Like, just get started. Your first time is your second thing is going to be so much better than your first thing. Your third thing's going to just get started, get momentum, because it takes reps. You know this from podcasts and creation. Nobody's going to be perfect their first 5 episodes. You got to get the reps in. Get started sooner rather than later.
Party.pro at Nick Gray News on Instagram and on social, and definitely subscribe, show some love to Nick on YouTube as well. And of course, the book, The 2-Hour Cocktail Party, highly recommended. Listen, creators watching and listening, get to an event, either support an event, but Nick and we're going to challenge you. Okay. We're going to get the book, and it's going to give you all the practical advice, the blueprint to have a successful 2-hour cocktail party. We're going to challenge you to host your first event. And then we're going to share those, and we're going to make sure we link this up. We're going to share those photos to Nick, and we'll make sure that you tag me as well, because I have seen hosting events, how it's transformed my life, not only in relationships, as I mentioned before, even in my self-confidence. I love it. I know you're going to love it. Even if it's small, 5, 10, 15 people, make it happen. Make it happen. We need more human connection. And of course, we have this book called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party that will show you step by step on how to accomplish that. So that is our challenge, right, Nick? That is our challenge to everybody watching and listening to this podcast.
Absolutely. More events. It can change your life. Trust me.
Let's go. Nick, it's been a pleasure. My man, you are my Yoda. You are my Ben Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You are the man who has taught me. You are my Apollo Creed in Rocky 3, who's taught me everything about hosting events and how to just improve in every aspect. So, brother, it's been a true pleasure just talking to you. And I wish you all the best in 2024. And we're definitely going to stay in touch. We're in Texas, so we're
Oh,
going to see each
yeah.
other again. All right.
Oh, yeah, for real.
Thank you,
Thank
brother.
you so much. Thanks for preaching the gospel about hosting events.
I'm here for it, man. Peace.
Peace.